So,
Flowtown Review sings wherever people request us to sing. We will be singing on World Water Day at
okay.
the African American Museum. I'm not sure when, but the total schedule isn't out yet, but we'll be singing there.
That's amazing. So, most of this work that you mentioned, would you say it's primarily through the People's Water Board? Is it through Sisters of Mercy, or is it more just a loose collaboration of people? How is it all done?
The Detroit People's Water Board is a coalition, and there are 31 agencies or organizations, all nonprofit or churches, that are part of the Detroit People's Water Board. Um, the organization that I belong to, the Sisters of Mercy, is a member of the Detroit People's Water Board, and the way they've supported the Detroit People's Water Board in many ways, financially. They've thrown me in. They've donated me to the Detroit People's Water Board. So uh, that's I guess I'm the major donation from the Sisters of Mercy. Uh, but there are many organizations, Bioneers, Sierra Club, uh, Flow for the Love of Water, uh, Great Lakes Water, environmental justice, just all kinds of organizations that that attend the board meetings and support the work. And so it's not that all of this is being done by the whole list is being done by the People's Water Board, although a lot of it is. Some of it is being done out here and here. For example, We the People of Detroit runs the water stations. Um, they they also have done quite a bit of the research and data on and published studies. Although Detroit People's Water Board has done some of that too, but so it's it's a coalition of organizations that are interested in the human right to water, and it's part of their work, but we come together to share that work and to support each other.
So, can you recall, because you've you've manned the water lines and you've both delivered water as well as manned the womaned the water stations. Um, are there any particularly poignant um, stories or situations related to uh, individuals or families who required water that stands out for you in terms of really continues to inspire you in your heart of hearts?
Yeah, I have a few stories I'll share with you.
Please.
One is, the first is, I always say that the Detroit water crisis came knocking at my front door. I lived on Canton with another Sister of Mercy here on the east side of Detroit, and our neighbor down, who lived down 3 houses, came and knocked on our front door and said, "We've had our water shut off. Can we take water from the side of your house, from the tap at the side of the house?" And we said yes. Now this is a family of 4, mother and father, 2 high school children. The father had just lost his job, and the mother had a serious heart condition and was disabled, not able to work. And he was looking for work, but that's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
So they dropped their laundry off at our house once a week, and we did laundry for the family of 4. And the kids and the father carried the buckets from the side of our house to their house for a year and a half. And I don't know how they survived. They they were grateful for what we did, but we weren't the answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I and after a year and a half, they found another house. They moved away, and the house that they moved to, of course, had water. So that was wonderful for them. But we missed them. And I'll just throw this in. The day after they moved out, the scrappers moved in and stripped the house completely of all, anything of value, including all of the fixtures and plumbing. And the water was running free into the street because they pulled the plumbing out. Yeah. And pretty soon the house was boarded up, and now it's gone. It was demolished 2 weeks ago. And that's sad because it was a good house that people were living in. But anyway, I don't know how they survived not being able to flush toilets. I have a woman who is a member of the Detroit People's Water Board who tells this story about when her water was shut off. She said, I would go and buy bottled water, which I would use to cook my food, and then after I had boiled the vegetables or used it to cook the food, I would use it to wash dishes, and then I would use it to flush the toilets. Now that's called recycling. When you take the water and use it for 3 different uses. Another story that really touched me is that I am a member of the advisory board for a school-based health center in a Detroit public school not far from here in Detroit. And once in a while when I attend those board meetings, I chair the meeting. And whenever I chair the meeting, I always ask the staff, what is it you're seeing among the children these days? What are the issues with the kids? And this is at a middle school. And sometimes the issues are pregnancy, sometimes they're suicidal ideation. They're serious issues that they're dealing with the kids. But this one time, they said, it's hygiene. And the social worker said, I noticed that the kids were dirty. So I started putting together hygiene kits, little Ziploc bags with a washcloth and a bar of soap and toothbrush and toothpaste, and I'm giving them out to the kids. And the kids said, Miss Clay, we can't use those because we don't have any water in our house. So the light went off. She said, so then I knew what the problem was. I went to the principal and told her what was going on, that the principal knew it too. The kids were dirty, their clothes were dirty, their bodies were dirty, they smelled. The kids actually smelled. And the principal then began opening the gymnasium in the morning for families to come in and use the showers before school started. And that was wonderful for her to do that, but that's not the answer. People need water in their homes. That's crazy. So, and the truth is, here's the other bad part about that, is that if a person there are certain designated people who must report to protective services if they know that a child is in a situation that's where they think there's neglect or something. And if you don't have water in your house, you are deemed a bad parent. You're a neglectful parent, and protective services will come and take your child. So people who have their water shut off are not only dealing with no water, they're dealing with the possibility of their kids being put in foster care, which drives me crazy because foster care costs a lot more than if they would just pay the water bill and keep families together. The other risk that goes along with having your water shut off is that after 6 months, the city transfers the balance on your water bill to your county tax bill on your house for your property tax. Now you're at risk of losing your home. So it's really serious. It's serious stuff that we're talking about. It's not just doing without water, which is serious in itself. The third story I'll tell you is I'm on the board of Authority Health here in the city, and it's the Detroit-Wayne County Health Authority. At one of the board meetings, the staff reported that they had provided a baby shower for at-risk mothers, and they asked the mothers, what are the barriers you are meeting in trying to provide for your children? These are women who either have just given birth or they're pregnant. So the mothers reported that the number one issue for them was they didn't have water to make formula for their babies. Clean water. They didn't have water. The water had been shut off. And that was not the answer that the staff was expecting. They were horrified. So, these things just make me want to scream. I can't stand it. It's so, and it doesn't have to be that way. We have tried to get the city to give an exception to homes where there are children, babies, elderly, disabled, people on chemo, and the city refuses. They will not do that. They will not. Actually, the quote I heard from the mayor is when he was asked that question by the director of Public Health Department, he said, if I did that, we wouldn't have any shutoffs. Because that's most of the people in the city of Detroit. Our mothers with babies and the elderly and the disabled. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the heartlessness of the whole situation. That how people can live with themselves and turn water off on children, I just don't know.
Let's turn to the idea of a fair price for water. Really thinking about, because it's something that you probably come across, right, from opponents when you're advocating for water accessibility and water access. You often, I'm sure, hear the counter argument that, it doesn't come free, it costs to clean the water, treat the water, deliver the water, all of that stuff. And so, how do you engage that argument that water access requires a price? It should be a fair price.
Regarding a fair price for water, the Environmental Protection Agency says that your water bill should be about 3 to 4% of your household income. Should not exceed that. That's what we have written into our water affordability plan. That if your income, and we're applying it only to people who are in poverty, so if your income is below a certain level, let's say federal poverty level, the bill that you received should not be more than 3% of your household income. And what that does for people is they're able to pay their bills because they're affordable, and they maintain their dignity, and they maintain their water. And the city gets some income. Right now, they're not getting any income from those folks. So it seems to me it's a win-win. The other thing I haven't seen researched, but I'm an old hospital administrator, and I always look at fixed and variable costs. And it seems to me most of the cost of running the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department are fixed. The cost of water is actually free. Now, the processing of water isn't free, but it's pretty much fixed. It's a fixed cost. You have to maintain the equipment, you've got the staff. So providing water to poor people who do not have water right now would be the incremental cost. It would only be incremental costs because your other costs are fixed. And the incremental costs are very low. But people would be, so it's almost nothing, but people would be able to pay something to the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, which they're not doing right now. So so how does, I guess the other thing is I'm old enough to remember that not so many years ago, we used to get a water bill every 3 months. We had quarterly water bills, and they were about $30. Now, the water bills in Detroit run about $100 a month for a family. And, people on a fixed income or no income or holding down 2 part-time minimum wage jobs. There are a lot of people in that situation here in the city of Detroit. They can't afford that. So we need to make water affordable so they'll stay employed, keep their homes, keep their children, pay something to the city. Those are all good things. Why can't we do that? Why won't the city adopt a water affordability plan? I can't figure it out.
So you mentioned that the gap between $30 for 3 months and $100 per month. Do you think that's because of inflation? Do you think that's because of wastage due to old water infrastructure? Is it because of usage increases? What are your do you know, or do you have thoughts or ideas about why there's that huge gap?
I could surmise. I think that part of the reason that water bills have escalated here in Detroit is that perhaps they weren't charging enough in the good old days, and they're catching up now. But I think really a major reason is that our whole water system and infrastructure was built for a city of almost 2 million people. And what have we got now? 600,000? And 10,000 households who are not paying, who have had their water shut off. So all that is now falling, the burden falls on those of us who are left in the city. And it's pretty expensive to maintain all that. And the infrastructure is aging. We've had a very tough winter this winter. And I know that one week when we had below 0 temps, there were 52 water main breaks in Detroit. And that's expensive. I think the infrastructure issue cannot fall on the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit built the infrastructure for the suburbs. And now we're paying for that also. The suburbs need to pay us back. They don't look at it that way. But we built the infrastructure. We built DWSD. We paid for it, the people of Detroit. And they're not willing to pay us back for that. The structure doesn't allow for that, but it should be. It should be happening. I don't know. That's I probably could give a better answer to that, but those are my thoughts.
That's a great answer.
I think the decline in population is the big one.
So you live in West Village.
I do.
I was surprised to learn that West Village and Indian Village combined have actually got a very high number of water shutoffs in the past few years. Because that's not generally the idea. You know, West Village and Indian Village are seen to be as relatively prosperous neighborhoods among the other neighborhoods in Detroit. Do you know or have you witnessed any neighbors or people in your neighborhood or block or general area who have had their water shut off?
Well, I live in an apartment building, and the landlord pays the water bill for all of us. We pay our rent, and the landlord pays the water bill. So we haven't gotten our water. I don't experience it here in my apartment building. Out on the streets, when the Detroit Water and Sewerage turns off your water, they put this blue line on your sidewalk, pointing to where the shutoff is in the front yard. And I see several of those in the neighborhood. Now, I don't know those neighbors, so I don't hear the stories. I'm here in my little apartment building. I know my neighbors here, but I don't know my neighbors out there. But I see those blue marks on the sidewalk, so I know that people in the neighborhood are being shut off. We're in zip code 48214, and my understanding is that that's the poorest zip code in Detroit and probably in Michigan. Now, it doesn't look like it because we've got Indian Village and West Village, and it's kind of looked upon as being one of the more upscale neighborhoods in Detroit. It's one of the neighborhoods that the mayor is investing in, although we haven't seen much so far. But when you go beyond this little enclave here into the neighborhoods, you can see how deteriorated the houses are and how many of them are boarded up, how many of them have been demolished. I've been in this neighborhood for 25 years, and I have watched the east side of Detroit disappear. I used to say that. I drive around and say, it's disappearing. All those homes that were there are gone. And you got Hans Farms putting in trees, and it's kind of creepy. to really, it's awful to see what's happened. Detroit used to be the city of homeowners, and actually had the most African American homeowners in the United States. Now we're renters. People have, the 2008 mortgage foreclosure crisis hit Detroit early and hard, and it's still hitting Detroit. We still have thousands of tax foreclosures, county tax foreclosures, every year. And what happens is people move out, they're evicted, the houses are boarded up, they're stripped, they're demolished, they're gone. And poor people have to leave the city.
to close, I'd like to ask you a little bit to reflect on your friends and water warriors who we have lost. Today, for instance, you are going to visit Mama Lila Cabell's
Wake.
wake in her family. Um, could you reflect a little bit on how you knew her and how she inspired you?
Well, I often say that the blessings that I receive from working with the Detroit People's Water Board are the people that I'm working with. And if I had to make a list, Lila Cabell would be at the top of that list. She is an absolutely wonderful person who gave of herself all the time until she died last week, and we didn't even know it. She would disappear because she'd be involved in so many things. She'd be off in Chicago speaking at a conference, Lila was one of the founders of the Detroit People's Water Board. And when I say founders, I'm talking about back in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been going on for more than 10 years, and she was one of the founders. And she, during her career, she was an assistant to Rosa Parks. And she was the president of the Raymond and Rosa Parks Institute. And she was with Rosa Parks for 30 years. And I always felt that when Lila spoke, I was hearing Rosa Parks. She would quote her often. But she spoke with the wisdom of Rosa Parks. And the other thing is her focus, although she worked so hard for water, her real focus was racism. Mm-hmm. And the reason she was involved in the water struggle was that she saw it as an issue of racism. That poor black families in Detroit were having their water shut off. The Illiches, although they hadn't paid their water bill at the Joe Louis, they didn't get their water shut off. I could go on about that. But anyway, corporations didn't get their water shut off. Poor families got their water shut off. And Lila and many of us see that as a way of getting these people out of the city. You're forced out of your home, you'll be forced out of the city, more than likely. So, and of course the city would never state that as a goal, but we just see it happening. So Lila, she taught me so much about racism, about white privilege, about poverty in the city. And it was just a real privilege to know her. And she leaves a big hole. I don't know what we'll do without her. So I've been talking to the other water warriors this week, and everybody feels the way I feel. We just feel like the starch has been washed out of us. That can we go on with the work without her? I mean, we will have to. We will have to, but it won't be easy because she was such a leader for us. And who will replace her? No one. No one. She's irreplaceable. She's. I wish all of you had known her. She was just wonderful. She was here in my apartment many times. You know, we had many talks, many gatherings here. wonderful woman.
Can you remember one memorable message that she might have said something and that sort of stuck with you?
I remember she was on the stage at the International Women's Conference here in Detroit, and she was talking about Rosa Parks, and she said this about Rosa Parks, that she said not too many, this doesn't get written down. She said, I don't know why it's not in the books, but she said when the police officer came to Rosa Parks and said, I'm going to arrest you, or you don't get out of that seat, you're going to get arrested. Probably it wasn't very nice the way it was said.
Mm-hmm.
She looked up at him and said, you may arrest me. And in other words, she was in charge. She never lost her dignity and her as a human being. She was her own person, and Lila certainly lived that and personified it, so that we could get a little feeling for Rosa Parks from her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are there any last words or parting comments that you would like to share with us before we thank you for your time?
Well, I mentioned earlier that we're surrounded by the Great Lakes and it's 20% of the world's fresh water. I just want to say we're so blessed. And those to whom much has been given, much is expected. We are blessed, but we also are responsible. And the Great Lakes are being threatened on all sides right now. There are so many water issues, I couldn't name them. From PFAS to Line 5 to Nestle's to whatever. It's happening all over the place. We need to get involved. We cannot be passive on this. Mm-hmm. We are responsible. Nobody else is going to do it. Who else is doing it? Michigan Department of Environmental Quality? I'm sorry.
What can we do?
What can we do? I happen to have a list. What we can do is find out what your municipality does regarding water shutoffs. And when people can't afford to pay their bills, do they shut off the water? Some municipalities do, others don't. Find out what yours does, and then help your neighbors who are without water. There are people without water near you. Boycott bottled water. It's the worst example of commodification of water, of privatization of water. Ask restaurants to make water and straws optional. A lot of people are doing that now. Mm-hmm. Asking restaurants, don't automatically give people water. Don't waste the water. Support legislation to make clean, affordable water a human right and to preserve water as a public trust. Invite the People's Water Board to come and speak at your church or your neighborhood. Participate in People's Water Board meetings. We meet on the second Tuesday of every month at 5:30 in the Cass Commons, which is behind Cass Unitarian Universalist Church at Forest and Cass. And everyone's welcome, and we need your help. And then if you have the means, support the People's Water Board by making a donation. We're poor, like our clients were poor, but you can make a donation at peopleswaterboard.org and learn more about People's Water Board there.